Keep your hands away from my aircraft. Ethan Cole caught Walter Mercer by the wrist before the old man's fingers reached the open maintenance panel. The movement was fast, harder than it needed to be. For 3 seconds, nobody on the flight line moved. Behind them, the dark body of a UH-60M Black Hawk shimmered in the Alabama heat. Its access doors were open. Diagnostic cables ran from its belly to 2 rugged laptops. 6 technicians stood among tool carts, replacement components, and empty water bottles left behind by a crew that had been working since before sunrise. Walter looked down at Ethan's gloved hand around his wrist. His own hand was trembling. It had been trembling for nearly 50 years. Ethan released him. "You do not have authorization to touch this aircraft," he said. His voice was controlled, but only just. "We have already lost 8 hours. I am not adding an injured civilian to the problem." Walter rubbed his wrist once. He did not answer the insult. His eyes remained on the Black Hawk. A small silver washer near the right landing gear trembled against the concrete as the auxiliary power unit hummed. It rolled half an inch, stopped, then moved again when the pitch changed. Walter watched it. "Does she always quit at 11 seconds?" he asked. The technicians stopped moving. Captain Ryan Beckett turned from the maintenance table. He was 34, clean-cut, and exhausted enough that the shadows beneath his eyes looked bruised. "What did you say?" Walter nodded toward the aircraft. "The starter engages. The turbine begins to spool. Then the aircraft goes quiet at 11 seconds. Ethan folded his arms. "Nobody told you that." "They did not have to." Specialist Emily Carter glanced at the laptop beside her. The last failed start had ended at 11.2 seconds. She looked back at Walter. He wore an old green field jacket despite the heat. The cuffs were faded almost gray. A dark leather tool pouch hung from his belt, worn smooth at the corners. His white hair moved gently in the exhaust wash from another helicopter taxiing across the far end of the airfield. He did not look like an aircraft mechanic. He looked like somebody's grandfather who had taken a wrong turn. Captain Beckett stepped closer. "Mr. Mercer, you were given temporary access because Chief Delaney placed your name on a visitor request before he retired. That does not make you part of this maintenance team." Walter's eyes shifted to him. "Frank did not retire," Beckett frowned. Walter reached into his jacket and removed a yellowed postcard. "He died 3 days ago." The anger on the flight line changed shape. Emily lowered her eyes. Ethan's posture softened, though his arms remained crossed. Walter held the card out to Beckett. On the front was an old photograph of a mountain lake. On the back, written in uneven blue ink, were 6 words. "She still goes quiet at 11. Underneath was the name Frank Delaney. Emily took 1 step closer. "Chief Delaney wrote that?" Walter nodded. "He called me 2 weeks ago. Said Valkyrie Two had a ghost that only appeared when she started carrying her own weight. He asked me to come down." "Why did you wait 2 weeks?" Ethan asked. It was not mockery this time. It was a real question. Walter looked at the postcard. "Because I thought there would be another call." Nobody answered. From beyond the maintenance area came the distant sound of a military band warming up near the grandstands. Rows of chairs had been arranged beneath white canopies. Families, retired aviators, senior officers, and old crew chiefs were beginning to gather for the retirement ceremony of Major General Thomas Harlan, commander of the Army Aviation Center. Valkyrie Two was supposed to lead the 6 aircraft flyover. The formation window was less than 90 minutes away. Without its lead aircraft, the flyover would be canceled. Ethan looked at the postcard, then at Walter. "I am sorry about Chief Delaney. I mean that. But a note from a retired inspector is not a troubleshooting procedure." 3 years and 8 months, Walter said. "What?" That is how long Frank had been retired. He counted every day. Ethan exhaled through his nose. "We have factory support on the telephone. We have tested the starter relay, the power distribution unit, the fuel controls, and the wiring harness. Every circuit passes continuity. Every component checks within limits." Walter nodded. "And she still quits at 11. Ethan's jaw tightened. "We believe the distribution unit has an intermittent internal fault under heat." "No." The word was quiet. Ethan stared at him. Walter pointed toward the lower fuselage behind the cockpit. "The unit is protecting the aircraft. Something else tells it to shut down. And you know that because the sound changes before the power drops." Emily looked at the data trace again. Ethan gave a short, tired laugh. "We have been analyzing that sound for 8 hours." "No," Walter said. You have been measuring it. The distinction irritated Ethan more than an insult would have. Captain Beckett checked the time. One controlled start, he ordered. Ethan turned. Sir, we already know what it will do. Then we lose 30 seconds confirming it. Ethan looked toward the grandstands, then signaled to the cockpit crew. The technicians cleared the aircraft. Emily reset the data capture at a higher sampling rate. The pilot called the area clear. Walter moved to the nose of the Black Hawk and stopped several feet from the closed panel. He lowered his head. The auxiliary power unit climbed to a thin mechanical scream. The starter engaged. Deep inside the aircraft, the turbine began to rotate. Walter closed his eyes. At 4 seconds, the airframe settled into a low vibration. At 7, the pitch rose. At 9, the silver washer near the landing gear jumped in place. Walter's throat moved as he counted without sound. At 11 seconds, the turbine noise collapsed. The caution tones sounded from the cockpit. Valkyrie Two fell silent. Walter opened his eyes. There. Ethan was already at Emily's screen. Starter control dropped. Same event. Emily zoomed in. The data looked clean until the final fraction of a second. Then a narrow voltage dip appeared beneath the software filter line. She leaned closer. That was not on the earlier display. It was, Ethan said. The system classified it as noise. Walter looked toward the lower fuselage. It is not noise. Ethan faced him. You heard a voltage dip. I heard the frame change. A modern Black Hawk is not an old farm engine. No, Walter said. But metal still moves. He walked toward the right landing gear and bent slowly. His knees resisted the motion. Near a hairline crack in the pavement, he picked up a black fragment no larger than a grain of rice. He rolled it between his fingers. Burned insulation. Ethan looked at it without reaching for it. This flight line services aircraft every day. That could have come from anywhere. Walter brought the fragment near his nose. It is fresh. You cannot know that. Walter held it toward Emily. She took it carefully and examined the edge. One side was dull with dirt. The other was glossy and newly melted. Her expression changed. He may be right. Ethan turned to her. Do not guess. I am not guessing. The exposed edge has not collected dust. Walter straightened. Frank said the fault only appeared when the aircraft was alive. Emily looked sharply at him. Fails alive. Walter's eyes moved to her. She continued. Chief Delaney wrote that in the margins of the paper troubleshooting manuals. Every time a static test passed, but a loaded test failed. For the first time, Ethan did not answer immediately. Captain Beckett extended the postcard back to Walter. What do you need? The panel opened. A light. And somebody authorized to move the harness while the engine is monitored. Ethan stepped between Walter and the aircraft. No, he is not reaching into a live electrical compartment. Walter looked at him. I did not ask to. That stopped Ethan. Walter continued. You do the work. I will tell you where to look. Beckett nodded. Visual inspection only. No connectors removed. No components disturbed without Cole's approval. Ethan still hesitated. Beckett lowered his voice. You have 80 minutes and no confirmed fault. Open the panel. Ethan turned toward the aircraft. This time, his anger was aimed less at Walter than at the possibility that Walter might be right. He released the fasteners and swung the panel open. Inside, bundled wiring ran between hydraulic lines, brackets, and control boxes. Everything looked clean, organized, modern. Walter opened the leather pouch on his hip. Inside were 4 old tools, a short wrench, a brass flashlight, an inspection mirror, and a screwdriver with a dark wooden handle. Ethan looked at the screwdriver. That belongs in a display case. Walter turned the worn handle between his fingers. Frank gave it to me when he stopped trusting my borrowed tools. A faint smile touched Emily's face. Walter handed the flashlight and inspection mirror to Ethan. Start at the lower clamp behind the pilot station. Ethan leaned into the compartment. I see the clamp. It is secure. Look beneath the harness. There is no clearance for the mirror. Then the harness has less clearance than it should. Ethan stopped. Emily raised her laptop. The voltage dip lines up with the first major vibration peak, not the heat rise. Ethan glanced toward her. That could still be coincidence. Walter pointed with the wooden screwdriver, but did not cross the edge of the panel. The harness was rerouted when the newer sensor package was installed. Half an inch left of the original path. Ethan looked again. How would you know that? The old mounting shadow is still visible on the frame. Emily stepped beside him and angled the light. A pale mark appeared on the inner skin where a bracket had once rested. Ethan's face became still. He repositioned the mirror beneath the wiring bundle. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then his breathing changed. There is a polished spot on the sleeve. Captain Beckett came closer. Bare conductor? Not visible. Walter nodded toward the clamp. It will not show until the bundle shifts. Ethan pulled his head from the compartment. You want me to loosen a flight control harness based on a mark in the paint? 1/4 turn, Walter said. Do not remove it. Relieve the pressure. Then run the starter. Ethan looked at the screwdriver in Walter's hand. The old man held it out. His fingers trembled around the handle. Ethan did not take it. You cannot keep that tool steady. The words were quieter than before, but they landed harder. Walter looked at his own hand. My hands shake when they are empty, he raised his eyes to Ethan. Give them honest work, and they remember. The flight line went silent. Ethan's attention moved from the trembling fingers to a scar that disappeared beneath Walter's sleeve. Emily saw it too. A thick surgical line ran along the inside of his forearm. That happened around an aircraft, she said. Walter did not respond. Ethan finally took the screwdriver. The moment the tool left Walter's hand, the trembling became more pronounced. 1/4 turn? Ethan asked. Walter nodded. No more. Ethan reached inside the panel and set the screwdriver against the clamp screw. He turned it exactly 90 degrees. The wiring bundle settled with a faint click. Walter heard it. So did Frank, he said. Captain Beckett signaled to the cockpit. Run the sequence. Full monitoring. Abort on command. The starter engaged again. 4 seconds. 7. 9. Emily watched the voltage line. Ethan watched the harness. Walter watched nothing visible at all. 10 seconds. The technician nearest the tool cart stopped breathing. 11. The turbine continued to climb. 12. 14. 16. The engine reached a stable idle. Emily stared at the screen. No drop. Ethan looked into the open panel as if the aircraft had spoken directly to him. Beckett ordered the test stopped before rotor engagement. As the turbine wound down, Walter pointed beneath the clamp. Moved the harness toward the frame by hand. Slowly, Ethan looked back at Beckett. The captain nodded. Emily connected a meter across the monitored circuit. Ethan pressed the bundle toward the structural rib. The voltage vanished. He released it. The voltage returned. Nobody spoke. Ethan repeated the movement once. 0. Release. Normal. He pulled the mirror deeper beneath the sleeve. This time, the light caught a narrow opening in the insulation. A thin line of copper flashed beneath it. Ethan sat back on his heels. We checked this harness. Walter nodded. While it was resting, Ethan looked at the screwdriver in his hand. All the fight had left his expression. What happened to your arm? Walter studied him for a moment. Not because he wanted to punish him. Because he was deciding how much of the past belonged to the young. Winter of 1971, he said. A Huey went down on a mountain landing zone. Same kind of failure. A wire tested good until the airframe flexed. The heat of Alabama faded behind his eyes. The flight line became a narrow ridge under a hard gray sky. Walter was 31 again. Snow blew sideways across a damaged UH-1. Inside the cabin were 6 wounded soldiers and a young warrant officer named Thomas Harlan. The helicopter's main electrical bus failed whenever the engine came under load. Walter and Frank Delaney had no replacement harness, no heated shelter, no diagnostic cart. They had wire, tape, lacing cord, and minutes. Frank found the worn section. Walter built the bypass. The cold had already taken the feeling from his fingers when the temporary connection slipped during the start. He pulled off his glove so he could hold it in place while Frank secured the splice. The metal burned with cold. The starter rose. The connection tried to break. Walter held it. He held it until Frank wrapped the repair, tied it away from the frame, and struck the fuselage twice with his wrench. Ready. The Huey lifted with 7 men aboard. Walter did not remember the flight to the field hospital. He remembered waking beneath white lights. He remembered a doctor explaining that the nerves in his right forearm had been permanently damaged. He remembered Frank sitting beside the bed with that wooden screwdriver across his knees. You still owe me a tool, Frank had said. Walter had looked at his shaking hand. Frank had placed the screwdriver in it. Then keep working. The Alabama flight line returned. Walter's right hand trembled beside his coat. Ethan stood with the old tool in his own hand. Warrant Officer Harlan survived? Emily asked. Walter looked toward the grandstands. He did. Beckett followed his gaze, but before he could ask more, a staff officer approached at a fast walk. Captain, General Harlan wants an update. The formation decision is due in 30 minutes. Beckett pointed at the exposed harness. Confirmed intermittent ground fault. Repair is underway. The staff officer looked at Walter, then at the postcard in his hand. Who was the civilian? Emily answered before anyone else. Walter Mercer. The staff officer stopped. What did you say? Walter Mercer. He worked with Chief Delaney. The officer looked at Walter's field jacket, his trembling hand, and the leather pouch. Then his eyes moved to the screwdriver Ethan was holding. Does he have a call sign? Walter's expression changed. Only slightly. The staff officer did not wait for an answer. He turned and walked rapidly toward the command tent, already reaching for his radio. Ethan watched him leave. What was that about? Walter looked back at the open panel. You have a repair to finish. The next 20 minutes moved without wasted motion. Ethan removed the damaged clamp under Beckett's authorization. Emily documented the wear point and checked the adjoining conductors. A replacement section was installed with proper strain relief. The harness was repositioned away from the structural rib and protected with an approved sleeve. Walter never touched the aircraft. He stood behind the certified technicians and spoke only when necessary. More slack before the bend. Check the underside. Do not tighten the clamp until the harness rests naturally. Ethan followed every instruction. When Emily struggled to seat the replacement connector, Walter watched her hands. Back it out. She did. Turn it slightly clockwise. How far? Until it stops fighting you. She adjusted it. The connector slid into place and locked. Emily looked at Walter. He nodded once. Ethan completed the inspection and signed the maintenance entry. Beckett reviewed the repair. A second qualified technician verified it. The final start began with 20 minutes remaining. The turbine crossed 11 seconds without hesitation. Then 20. Then full idle. This time, the sound did not die. Valkyrie Two came alive. The crew did not cheer immediately. They listened. The engine stabilized. The instruments remained clean. The rotor began its slow, heavy turn above them. Only then did Beckett release the breath he had been holding. Valkyrie Two is fully mission-capable. A cheer broke across the maintenance line. Emily covered her mouth with one hand. Ethan closed the panel carefully and checked each fastener twice. Walter stepped away from the aircraft. He removed Frank's postcard and looked at the 6 words again. She still goes quiet at 11. A black staff sedan entered the flight line. The cheering stopped. The rear door opened. Major General Thomas Harlan stepped onto the pavement in his service uniform. Silver stars shone on his shoulders. Behind him walked the command sergeant major, the aviation brigade commander, and several members of the retirement party. Captain Beckett brought the crew to attention. Harlan walked past him. He passed Ethan. He passed Emily. His eyes remained fixed on Walter. The old man stood near the nose of the running Black Hawk, one hand trembling at his side. Frank's postcard held in the other. Harlan stopped 4 feet away. For a moment, neither man spoke. The rotor gathered speed overhead. Then the general said one word. Shepard. Walter looked at him. Tom. The command sergeant major glanced toward the crew. Ethan's face had gone pale. Harlan looked at Walter's shaking hand. You still carry it. Walter glanced at the leather pouch. Frank made sure I did. The general's eyes moved to the postcard. I heard he passed. 3 days ago. Harlan lowered his head for a moment. He found the fault. He heard it, Walter said. I came to finish his shift. Harlan looked at Valkyrie Two. Its rotors cut the sunlight into slow, moving bands. Then he turned toward the assembled technicians. Most of you know me as the commander of this center, he said. No microphone carried his voice. It did not need one. Before that, I was a warrant officer who once believed he was going to die on a frozen ridge. The maintenance crew remained motionless. 6 wounded soldiers were in the cabin behind me. Our aircraft lost electrical power every time I tried to lift. Walter Mercer and Frank Delaney found a fault no instrument could hold long enough to identify. Harlan looked at Walter. They repaired that aircraft with what they had. Walter sacrificed the use of his hand to keep the connection alive long enough for Frank to secure it. Ethan looked down at the screwdriver he had placed on the tool cart. Harlan continued. 7 men came home from that mountain. I was one of them. The words settled over the flight line. No one shifted. No one looked away. Harlan faced Walter again. I spent 38 years in uniform because you and Frank gave me the years to spend. Walter's jaw tightened once. He did not lower his eyes, but the postcard trembled between his fingers. Harlan brought his heels together. His right hand rose in a precise salute. The brigade commander saluted. The command sergeant major saluted. Captain Beckett followed. Then Emily. Then Ethan. One by one, every service member on the maintenance line raised a hand. Walter stood before them in a faded field jacket, his old leather pouch at his side. For 3 seconds, he did not move. Then his trembling right hand rose to his brow. As his fingers touched his forehead, the shaking stopped. General Harlan held the salute. So did the entire line. When Walter lowered his hand, Harlan stepped closer. There is one more thing, the general said. He turned toward Captain Beckett. I want Walter Mercer and Chief Warrant Officer Frank Delaney entered into Valkyrie Two's maintenance history as the men whose field experience identified this fault. The repair belongs to your crew. The discovery belongs to them. Yes, sir. Harlan looked toward the grandstands. And Mr. Mercer is not watching the flyover from a parking lot. Put him beside my family. Walter shook his head. I did not come for a seat. I know, Harlan said. That is why you are getting one. A quiet smile passed between them. Ethan stepped forward after the general moved away. He removed his work glove and extended his hand. Mr. Mercer. Walter looked at it. I was wrong, Ethan said. I saw your hands before I understood what they had done. Walter took his hand. Ethan's grip was firm, but careful. I should not have grabbed you. No, Walter said. You should not have. Ethan accepted the answer. Then Walter nodded toward Valkyrie Two. But you protected your aircraft. Next time, protect it without deciding that age has nothing left to teach you. Yes, sir. Walter released his hand. Emily approached with the wooden screwdriver. You almost forgot this. Walter looked at the worn handle. Then he closed Emily's fingers around it. Frank gave it to me when I needed to keep working. Her eyes filled. I cannot take this. You can. What should I do with it? Walter looked at her laptop. Use the computer. Trust the data. Emily waited. Walter added, then look at what the data was not built to notice. She held the screwdriver against her chest. I will. Valkyrie Two lifted from the flight line minutes later. Walter stood beside Harlan's family as 6 Black Hawks crossed the field in formation. The lead aircraft passed over the grandstands with its rotors cutting a deep rhythm through the afternoon air. Harlan did not look up immediately. He looked at Walter. Walter watched Valkyrie Two until it became a dark shape against the sun. After the ceremony, he returned alone to his old pickup at the edge of the airfield. The cab smelled faintly of coffee, leather, and the cedar blocks he kept beneath the seat. He placed Frank's postcard on the steering wheel. She still goes quiet at 11. Walter took a pencil from the dashboard and wrote beneath Frank's name. Not anymore. He paused. Then he added 3 more words. We finished it. Walter set the postcard on the passenger seat. His right hand trembled as he turned the key. The engine started. He rested both hands on the steering wheel and looked once toward the flight line, where young technicians were closing their tool carts beneath a sky still echoing with rotor noise. Then he drove home. Some men leave medals behind. Others leave a machine that still knows how to bring people home.